Welcome back to the Nutrition Made Simple podcast. At Healthy Steps Nutrition, we believe something as fundamental as nutrition shouldn't be complicated, which is why we focus on a simple, habit-based approach. We know that becoming the best and healthiest version of yourself isn't just about following macros, a meal plan, or killing yourself at the gym. You have to look at a holistic approach, looking at stress management, sleep, mindset, lifestyle, support system, and of course, exercise and nutrition. I'm your host, Nicole Coyne, registered dietitian and founder of Healthy Steps Nutrition, CrossFit HSN, and HSN Mentoring. I'm also the author of the Healthy Kids Cookbook, 100% kid-approved recipes the entire family will love. You can find it on Amazon. In this podcast, I am going to teach you how to take one step at a time to becoming the healthiest version of yourself. Today's podcast guest is Kayla Pollock. She is a registered dietitian. She also was on our mentor team. So she helps with coach development. She owns a gym as well. So not only does she help the coaches on our going through our mentoring program, she is a coach herself. She coaches classes. Her and her husband own Radiant Fitness and Nutrition, where they combine nutrition and fitness and help people in the greater Chicago area. I'm so excited to have her on today's podcast. She actually did a continuous glucose monitoring experiment herself. And today we talk about some of the common myths around blood sugar management, some of the questions that get asked, some of the big things, and why people should care about their numbers, why you should get your blood work done so you can track trends and see where you are in this sickness to fitness continuum. So, I really hope you enjoy this conversation with Kayla, where we talk all about understanding your numbers and what she learned from her own personal continuous glucose monitoring experiment and what we have learned as we've started to onboard clients to do nutrition coaching and accountability with continuous glucose monitoring. Enjoy this conversation with Kayla. Kayla, welcome to the Nutrition Made Simple podcast.
Thank you. It is so great to be back.
I think, is this the first time you've been on this podcast? You've been on the Grow podcast a bunch of times with coach development, but I think this might be the first episode with you.
I think you are absolutely right. So yay, I'm super excited to be here for the very first time guesting on Nutrition Made Simple.
So just so people understand your background, you are super involved with the other company, with HSN Mentoring. You lead up coach development. You are the CrossFit preferred nutrition course. When people sign up for that course and they work with a dietitian for 3 months, you are the person, you are the dietitian that they work with. You have been involved with CrossFit for a long time. You're a coach, you're an athlete, you're a mom. Like, you can see all of these different lenses, which is really great. And we're just thankful to have you on our team helping with coach development, the CrossFit preferred course. And now talking about something fun that we've added with HSN HQ. And you actually did a little glucose experiment yourself with continuous glucose monitoring. So for people who've never heard about continuous glucose monitoring, I think it's important for us just to high level overview. What are we looking at with continuous glucose monitoring? People that hear blood sugar monitoring, naturally go down the path of, oh, you must have diabetes, because that's historically where people focused on blood sugar was if you were pre-diabetic or diabetic and going down the road of all these different chronic diseases that are the result of uncontrolled blood sugar.
Yeah, absolutely. So I decided to sign up under you to get my CGM, my continuous glucose monitor. And I had many reasons, but really I was excited to turn myself into a test subject, not only to share what I learned with everyone on here, as well as my own clients, but also, Nicole, I don't know if you know this, but my whole family, both sides, have a history of diabetes. And so this is something that is really close to home. I see my family dealing with it. I help them deal with that. And so it's been really eye-opening. And I was honestly curious to see how my body was reacting, knowing the family history that I have.
So we'll definitely dive into some of the things from your personal experience later in this podcast episode. And I'll tie in some of the clients that we've been working with who had, kind of uncontrolled blood sugars when they first started. So we'll have some interesting experiments to talk about towards the end. But I want to talk a little bit about like, what are the blood markers? Diabetes affects a lot of people. 1 in 10 people have diabetes. 20% of those people do not know they have diabetes. And 1 out of every 3 people have diabetes. It is one of the top healthcare costs of all different things is diabetes management and control, having to give yourselves insulin or pills and all these different things to help control diabetes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think let's kind of start at how do we even know if someone is diabetic? Well, it starts with annual blood work, and they're really looking at only 2 things. They're looking at A1C, which is the average of your blood sugar management in the span of 3 months, as well as one data point looking at your fasting blood sugar. So they tell you not to eat for hours before. So don't eat past, it's usually 7 o'clock the night before, and then you come in and they do a test. Those who have an A1C of 5.7 to 6.4 are considered pre-diabetic, and that's that 1/3 of the population testing here. And then anything higher than 6.5 is considered diabetic, which it's shocking to I know this information, but to hear you say it out loud, that 1 in 5 don't even know that they have diabetes.
It's crazy, right? And I think the truth is most people listening to this podcast don't get annual blood work per year because it's not convenient or for whatever reason, and we don't get it tested. I mean, I've gone a couple years before with not getting blood work done. And I think we get so busy in the routine, or we don't have an annual checkup for them to order the blood work, or that paperwork sits in the car, or we're scared of needles, so we don't get the blood work. I mean, there are so many different reasons why people don't get blood work, but I think it's really important to understand where you are at to take control of your health. And the things that we're talking about today, you don't need to do all of these things. You don't have to wear a continuous glucose monitor to implement some of the tips we'll talk about at the end. But I think it is a great way to invest in yourself, to figure out where you're at, how your body responds to different things, and what you can do to help prevent chronic disease. Because the truth is, when we look at the leading causes of death in the US, so many of them, 9 out of the top 10, are either caused or worsened by elevated blood sugar, by diabetes. Like, if we think about that, that is mind blowing. If we were able to get our blood sugar under control, we would be able to live longer.
Absolutely. I think it's easy to forget because, like, we've started this, when people think blood sugar, the first thing that they think about is diabetes. But there's so much more to that story, and so much more for those who don't know and are not taking the proper actions to manage that blood sugar, whether they're diabetic or not. High blood sugar levels, chronic elevated blood sugar, can lead to other risks that increase our likelihood of heart disease, stroke, kidney disease, vision problems, neuropathy, having that nerve damage, which often comes as like tingling in our fingers and our toes. And it just becomes expensive, and it becomes a thing. One of the quotes I love is, if you don't invest in your health, you'll be forced to invest in your illness later on. And that's exactly what we're looking at.
I mean, I can tell you from personal experience working in the hospital, the people that would come in week after week after week were the people who had uncontrolled diabetes and got a cut. And then they didn't realize they had a cut on their foot because they had neuropathy, and then it would get infected and gangrene. And then they have amputations. Then their kidneys start having issues. They're on dialysis. You look at how many people that are on dialysis because of uncontrolled blood sugar. It is a significant amount. So these things that we're going to talk about today are really, really important, no matter where you are, to help prevent chronic disease. So, when we think about blood sugar management, I think there's a lot of people do not know. And to be honest, I think diabetes education in the US is broken. Like, that is the thing I got the most frustrated about working in the hospital, was how I was supposed to teach people how to manage their diabetes, have 60 grams of carbohydrates, whatever you want. You want 4 juices? Great. Have 4 juices. I know that juice is going to spike up your blood sugar a lot faster than a different type of carbohydrate, like an apple, that has fiber and that takes a little bit longer to process and digest. But there wasn't any rules around it, which makes it really tough to get control. And then you're constantly playing this catch up game. So for anyone that has diabetes that's listening to this, like, awesome. Great job for downloading this podcast and listening. I hope that you take some tips to help you manage your diabetes. If you do have diabetes and you don't have a continuous glucose monitor, that would be step number one, get one, because it's a great way to instantly see what's going on so that you can take control of your health and take control of your A1C. One of my uncles has diabetes and he's had it uncontrolled for quite some time. And in November, we go home for Thanksgiving every year. And I was like, hey, I really think that you should get a continuous glucose monitor. And he's like, well, what's that? And so we start talking about it. By December, he had one because he got it from his doctor. Insurance paid for most of it. He's paying for a little bit. But 4 months later, his blood sugar is almost down to normal now, like the pre-diabetes state under 6.4, because he is able to make educated decisions on what he is eating and understands exactly what's going on inside of his body. And he's not having to prick himself, which honestly doesn't feel good. I don't know if you've ever done that before, but I don't like that. So normal blood sugar. If your blood sugar is normal, what does normal mean and what causes it to go up? I'd love for us to spend a couple minutes talking about this.
Yeah, I say we'll start with the fasting, right? Those who wake up after not eating for a few hours, we should expect to see blood sugar, if they were to prick their finger or they have their CGM, anywhere from 70 to 99 milligrams per deciliter. If we're looking after eating, right, and it's normal for our blood sugars to elevate after we eat, we're really looking, is that blood sugar then decreasing back to normal range under 140, 180 is on that higher level there within 1 to 2 hours.
Yeah. So we want to make sure that we are having foods and not eating too much carbohydrates, because carbs are what spike up our blood sugar, breaks down into sugar. So carbs are what are going to bring up our blood sugar. And most people don't even realize carbohydrates is a big umbrella. And it's not saying you can't have a lot of carbohydrates. I would recommend starting around 40% of the calories that you consume from carbohydrates that are high in fiber, and having some protein and some fat with it is going to slow down that spike of your blood sugar. I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there, like people thinking, oh, well, I'm having whole wheat pasta, so I can have as much pasta as I want because it's whole wheat. Well, the carbohydrates are what bring up your blood sugar. Just because it's whole wheat doesn't mean that there's not carbohydrates in there. It might take a little bit longer because there's a little fiber in there that slows down digestion, but it's still going to go up to probably pretty close to the same amount that it would have if you were to have the white pasta. So have a normal portion of the white pasta and then go for a ton of vegetables and have some protein, some healthy fat with it if you like that stuff better. Like, we want some stuff that we can eat. So, we understand what brings up our blood sugar in regards to food. Carbohydrates, so you've got like bread, pasta, cereal, juice, sugar.
Even your fruits.
Fruit, exactly. This is a common thing that I hear. I was working with a diabetic patient a few years ago, and they're like, well, I eat a whole bowl, like a big giant bowl of watermelon every night before I go to bed. And that's a lot of sugar in there that your body, just because it's fruit and fruit has vitamins, minerals, it's good. Too much of a good thing can still cause a huge inflammatory response and a blood sugar spike, and it's going to work all night to bring it down. So, when you think about fasting blood sugar under 125, if your blood sugar is over 125 on 2 accounts fasting, you technically have diabetes. That is what is labeled as diabetes. So we want it to be under that 125 amount. Below 70, below 60 definitely is going to be hypoglycemic, low blood sugar. And people with low blood sugar end up getting shaky. They get confused, dizzy. If you end up having to play this catch-up game all the time, giving yourself insulin, it's pretty easy to go low. If you accidentally give yourself too much insulin, or you think you were eating and you give yourself insulin and then you don't eat, could end up going pretty low. Most people don't go too low unless they have diabetes, though.
That was one thing I remember having a huge discussion when I was in my master's program to become a dietitian. And it was, we have a very consistent and regulated mechanism that is basically untouched for most in normal conditions, where if our blood sugar drops too low, our pancreas is going to release glucagon to bring it back up to normal ranges, right? That's consistent across the board. What happens though is if we're constantly having all the watermelon right before we go to bed, or all the pasta, all the carbohydrate, we're pushing that elevated blood sugar over and over and over again. Our body, while it's releasing insulin, starts to become less sensitive, which then starts to break that normal response, making it harder for our bodies to bring back down our blood sugar within normal ranges. And I think that's really important for us to remember, that while it's normal to go up, and it is going to go up, if we keep pushing it, at some point, our body starts to become resistant, and then we start to get into even more complications.
Absolutely. It's still an inflammatory response that your body has to do a lot of work to bring your blood sugar down. So even if your blood sugar is great all the time, and I know you had, that experience, just because it is good doesn't mean we should eat a giant thing of ice cream every single night, because our blood sugar doesn't go out of range all night long. Like, we still have to think about those things. It was super interesting. We were at church the other day, and one of the guys that's doing the continuous glucose monitoring grabbed me. He's like, "Nicole, I got to talk to you." I'm like, "Oh yeah, what's going on?" And he said, "Don't judge me about what I'm going to say." And I said, "I'm not going to judge you. What's going on?" He said, "I had 6 slices of pizza the other night." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Did you have anything else with that?" He's like, "Nope, I just ate the pizza." I'm like, "Okay." And he said, "My blood sugar was through the roof all night, and it didn't go back down until the afternoon the next day." So if you think about that, according to like diabetes regulations, his blood sugar was over 125 when he woke up in the morning. If he were to get his fasting blood sugar at that moment, that would have been one of 2 points. So like that's an important thing to think about. Your body has to work really hard, especially if you're eating a large carbohydrate meal at night. Like, think about some of the myths about carb loading, right? You've got to meet the next day, and you eat this giant carbohydrate meal. And the night before that meet, your body's working really hard to break down all of those carbohydrates. It's going to impact your sleep. So that was my next question to him. I'm like, "Well, how'd you sleep that night?" He's like, "Nicole, I slept terrible."
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, okay." And he goes, "Man, I wish I would have done this a lot earlier. I would have realized how bad it was for me to eat 6 slices of pizza." And I was like, "Well, I'm glad we figured it out now." But the cool thing is, from a client's perspective, having that instant gratification of seeing what's going on based on the decisions that you're making has really been eye-opening for clients. Like, yes, he knows he shouldn't have 6 slices of pizza, but I think sometimes we might get tempted because having the high salty, high fat, high carbohydrate foods are super addicting. And then we forget, hey, we should stop right now. Instead, our brain is like, "Oh, give me more, give me more." And if you have more educated decisions, you could probably make a better, healthier choice.
Oh, 1,000%. And I think it's a great reason why the CGM, and I'm only doing this for 30 days, right, is so, so beneficial. Well, the A1C, if you are getting your regular blood work done, can give you the like overview on how things are looking long term. Remember that 3 months. But it doesn't tell me that, hey, when I ate 6 pieces of pizza, I didn't sleep well, and it really messed with my blood sugar for a long period of time. And again, when we keep doing this, what's going to happen is it's going to be harder to feel the way we want to feel, because our body is working so hard. We're not getting enough sleep, and we're probably not going to see the health and wellness goals, the progress that we're looking to. Mainly, the thing I hear from my clients is they're unable to lose weight, which we know also plays into this mismanaged blood sugar. So I think having this real-time data every 5 minutes, it's tracking what your blood sugar's at, is so great to learn how your body is individually handling the foods that you're choosing to eat.
Absolutely. And every person is a little bit different, right? Like, if you were to eat something and I were to eat the same thing, our bodies would respond differently, because my body reacts to food, carbohydrates, a little bit different than yours. It has to be an individualized approach, and having more data will help. If you are eating healthy and you're at a healthy weight and your numbers are good when you have annual blood work, the CGM might not necessarily be the next step for you. But if you're like, "Man, I'm struggling to see the results that I'm looking for," or, "Hey, my A1C is tracking up and I need to get control," this is a great way to take control of your own health and dial it in. To be honest, I feel like every single diabetic should have a CGM. It does not hurt. I hate needles. It does not hurt. You cannot feel it. it's a great way for you to start gaining such tight control of your blood sugars. So normal blood sugar, we went over that. If your blood sugar goes up, it technically should go down within 2 hours. It should be back to where it started within 2 hours. One of the things that really helps it go back down is if going for a brisk walk, getting your heart rate up, movement helps to stabilize blood sugar. And even with the Signos, with the Dexcom G6, one of the cool things, it gives you an alert. It's like, hey, your blood sugar's rising, go for a walk.
Yeah. Yeah. I always tell my clients one of the best things you can do to improve glycemic control or your glucose control and overall digestion is going for a walk. And also it's really great to get outside, helps with stress management. But I actually tested this. I had a meal that I knew not a meal. I had trail mix, which let me tell you, this trail mix is like 90% chocolate. So I had chocolate, Nicole. I knew it was going to elevate my blood sugar because I had already tested it. But what I did was I decided to have one serving, which was a quarter cup, which is, if I'm being honest, not the typical portion that I actually get myself, but I had it. And then I went for a walk to walk my daughter to school, and it's 1 mile there and back. And I didn't see the same spike as when I did the same thing without the walk. And it was so, so cool to see that actual data for all the things I tell my clients to do coming together and doing the things that I know it should. And being able to share that data with my clients really solidified. Let's go for walks, especially being in Chicago here. That's not always something we get to do. So we're going to take advantage of it on the warm months when we can.
I was looking up some statistics regarding exercise. I think we should talk about this for a couple minutes. Mm-hmm. Exercise can boost glucose uptake by 50 times when compared to when you're sedentary. So if you were to eat something, go for a brisk walk, get your heart rate up, your body is able to absorb, your cells will take in that glucose up to 50 times better than if you were just to go sit down. If you think about when we eat dinner, how many times do we go for a walk after we eat dinner versus go sit on the couch and watch TV or go move or go do something? Like, holy cow, what a great activity to get yourself into. And just going for a walk with the family could be a really, really great thing to do. So I think that's a good action step that you can take. It shows you with the numbers. It wasn't just you that was with me, with all of our clients so far, even with my uncle who has diabetes. We went out to dinner and his blood sugar was spiking a bit. And then afterwards we went for 4 laps, like around the building. And I was like running to keep up with him, but his blood sugar went down, no problem. And he didn't give himself any insulin. He's like, Nicole, it's already back down to normal by the time he had gotten home. And it was because he walked for 20 plus minutes at a very fast pace to increase his glucose uptake. And he knew it. He knew exactly what was going to happen. He's like, I better go around one more loop. It hasn't started going down yet. Like, he knew because of the instant gratification, the instant results from the continuous glucose monitor, which I thought was really cool.
So cool. And I love that statistic, 50%. That's a huge, huge benefit. And we know that regular, consistent exercise has been shown to lower blood sugar, like we just talked about, and over time is going to increase our insulin sensitivity. So long-term glucose control as well by simply moving our bodies more with that aerobic capacity workouts. I love that.
All right. So I want to bring up something because I think this is a common myth that people don't really understand. And when we start putting these pieces of the puzzle together, they're like, oh yeah, that definitely happens to me. So we eat something. Let's say we have a high carbohydrate meal. Our blood sugar goes up. Like, let's say we have a giant sub and chips and maybe a sweet tea. Okay. I think I would be falling asleep after that. But let's say we have that. Our blood sugar goes up. Our body secretes a lot of insulin. We don't have diabetes. We have our blood sugars under control. It's pushing out a ton of insulin because it's like, hey, your blood sugar is way higher than it normally is. Now it had spiked up fast, and now it's going to go down really fast because all this insulin is pushed out into our body. And so that's telling our cells to pick all the glucose up that's in our blood and, start storing it. So people don't realize sometimes, oh, well, if my blood sugar goes up and my body just, does its thing to bring it back down, I'm totally fine. Well, it's kind of like overusing your car, right? Like, you constantly are pushing the envelope. Your body at some point your pancreas is going to be like, hey, I'm tired. I need a break. I can't do this anymore. like
Mhm.
hence type 2 diabetes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that is that like chronic overuse, like overusing the car. I love that. That, yeah, leads to insulin resistant, meaning our bodies are not listening to that insulin response, whether we're producing insulin and releasing it, it's not allowing that sugar to get out of our blood into the cells to be used. And the other side of this is something I actually experienced that if I did have a carbohydrate and I did see a huge spike up and then a big crash down, while I definitely felt tired after, you know what else I felt? I felt hungry, Nicole, and I totally went back for more snacks. So that big spike followed by the hard crash left me eating more food and honestly cravings of things that probably weren't going to help my blood sugar anymore.
I think that's a really good point. But, when people start correlating, if you eat that sub type thing with chips and a sugar sweetened beverage meal for lunch, and then you are feeling like you have no energy and you have to grab the coffee in the afternoon, like start correlating it back to what you ate. One of the cool things that we do with the CGM is looking at dinners. And a lot of times that's where we have to do the most work with clients is our dinner. And when they come to the own conclusion of, man, my blood sugar was elevated for a lot of the night, especially if we were drinking alcohol. Like, holy cow, blood sugar was up. And because I ate carbohydrates and I consumed alcohol, and our body breaks down the alcohol first and doesn't break down the carbohydrates until the alcohol is done, we end up having a blood sugar that's elevated throughout the night. And some people have the opposite problem, right? Like the blood sugar goes super low when they drink alcohol. But either way, it's not helping our sleep.
It is definitely not helping the sleep.
So I think that's something that we really need to think about. Another thing that I want to bring up is exercise and blood sugar. There's so many different groups that I'm in that are continuous glucose monitoring groups. And there's always questions every single day about my blood sugar is going up when I exercise. And the biggest spike for me out of everything that I did, whether it be eat anything or different types of exercise, CrossFit workouts, especially the ones that were like 30+ minute Metcons, would spike, not partner, like where I had a break, but by myself, those would spike up my blood sugar really high. Like it would go over 200. And it's because our body is like, hey, you're using a lot of sugar. I'm going to release sugar from your body. I'm going to make the sugar that's stored in the form of glycogen and release it so that you have something to burn, because remember, our body's main source of fuel is glucose, is sugar. So if we're using it up, exercising, our body's natural response is to break it down, that's stored glucose in the body, so that we can use it for energy.
Yeah, I remember falling in love with this topic, and I experienced that same thing. Well, I don't do the super intense HIIT CrossFit workouts. I do lifting. And those two things are both what we consider anaerobic exercise. And absolutely, when our heart rate is that elevated, we don't process the sugar that's already in the blood as easily as when we're doing a brisk walk. And that's why your uncle had decreased his blood sugar. So yeah, we need different energy from different pathways. And without getting in the weeds, we're getting that from the glycogen stored. We're getting that from our liver, and we're also making it through different fat sources. And so all of that influx, when our body's desperately trying to get energy, is increasing, spiking that blood sugar up. However, I don't know what your timing was. At least what I saw, within the next hour or two, it was back down. And then actually for the rest of my day, my blood sugars were managed a lot better despite the foods I was eating. So long term, it was really beneficial.
Absolutely. I had the same experience. I'd love to just hear some of the other takeaways that you had personally, and then we'll talk about some actionable tips for people if they want to get started with continuous glucose monitoring. What would that look like? But then if you don't, and you're like, hey, I just want to learn from the people that are doing it, what to do.
Yeah. So this experience has been eye-opening. And let me preface all of this with, I'm a very healthy individual. I do resistance training. I focus on Olympic lifting. I work out 4 times a week, and I'm active outside of that scheduled activity. And I'm also just a balanced eater because I went to school for this. I naturally do that really well. And I'll give you an example. I started to jump into food logging just to kind of see how my blood sugar was reacting to the different foods, different portion size, different combos of foods, just to have that full picture and be able to talk with people about it. And what I found is at the end of the day, if I was food logging as I went or food logging retroactively, I was pretty much the same, meaning I was probably about 30 to 40% carbohydrates, 30 to 35% protein, and 30 to 35% fat without even trying. So I want everyone to know that keeping that in mind, I did have a lot of takeaways. First one would be eating carbs alone. I always tell my clients carbs should always have friends, meaning pair it with fat, pair it with protein. When we're doing really well, pair all three together. And one of the things I tried was I had one serving of a caramel, it's Fit Active rice cakes. And rice cakes are one of those marketed healthy snacks that you can have. But no, as I was talking about, huge spike followed by a huge drop. That's exactly what I experienced when having that kind of snack. And again, it left me feeling really hungry. The other thing that I learned is there are some days when I do a really great job with balancing my meals throughout the day versus having larger meals just a few times a day. Portion control was really helpful. When I had smaller, more frequent meals that were balanced, my blood sugar was more consistent. But when we think about it, it makes sense. When I'm not over consuming or overloading my body with a bunch of energy all at one time, it's easier on my body to break that food down and use it as an energy source, unlike those big meals where I'm definitely over consuming all at one time and probably eating a little bit too fast because I was hungry.
I think those are some really good takeaways from the clients that we've worked with. I think for them, it's been the accountability of not, tracking their biometrics once a month, but really seeing what's going on like in an instant, right? Well, really within 5 minutes of them eating and starting to see the trends. There are people that we've been working with it. Like we've been talking about exercising for a while, and then they started doing it with the continuous glucose monitoring. They're like, man, I can see the difference now. The other thing that it really helped people that struggled with like eating sugar at night, like mindlessly snacking, my husband being one of them, the cookies, he's like, okay, I see my blood sugar is spiked up and now I'm connecting the dots that's the reason why I'm not sleeping well and I'm done with it. Like Jason used to get cookies and eat a lot of them in one sitting at night. And he hasn't done it since he did the continuous glucose monitoring over a year ago, which is amazing. And so I think that's a big takeaway. Other things that people have come up with, and I want to give some actionable tips as we wrap this up. One of them is the plate method. So people noticed that when they had what you just said, protein, carbs, and fats, when they followed the plate method, when they ate those vegetables first and then the protein, save the starch to the end, they noticed that their blood sugar was more controlled than just having a carbohydrate meal. We talk about the plate method all the time. It is not only going to help you stay satisfied and full, but it's going to keep you balanced and it's going to help stabilize your blood sugar, which are all three really important things when it comes to creating healthy habits. And the cool thing about the plate method is you can do it really anywhere. Sugar sweetened beverages. I found an interesting statistic that came out of BU. Drinking more than 12 ounces per day of sugar sweetened beverages was associated with 53% higher incidence of high triglycerides. High triglycerides are related to fatty liver, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is another really big issue here in the US. So, I think this is an important thing to think about. Like, what are you drinking? Are you going to Starbucks and getting all of the loaded sugary drinks? Are you going to another coffee shop and getting loaded drinks? Or are you getting a latte with almond milk? What are you putting in your coffee? Is it sugar sweetened beverage or creamer? Like, what are you doing? How are you getting the added sugar in? So, I think this is a very important thing to think about. Holy cow, if we could cut out the sugar sweetened beverages, that's going to help our triglycerides stay stable, which is a really important piece of preventing chronic disease.
Absolutely. I think I get the question a lot when I bring up sugar sweetened beverages and I say added sugar, which gets confused with carbohydrates and all of that. The AHA recommends no more than 6 teaspoons a day of added sugar for women and 9 teaspoons a day for men. Now, let me put this into another context. You said like a Starbucks latte or frappuccino. A Starbucks frappuccino has upwards to 20 teaspoons in a grande frappuccino. A can of soda, I'm going to say Coke, 10 1/4 teaspoons. That is already in one beverage. That's not including all the other things we're drinking and eating throughout the day. We are already over the recommended amount.
Most people have no idea what they are actually consuming, and it's taking some time to look at the labels. When we talk about teaspoons, it could be tough to know, okay, well, my thing says grams. So what does that mean? 4 grams in 1 teaspoon. So if we say for ladies, 6 teaspoons times 4, that's 24 grams of added sugar per day. But again, going back to the watermelon story, that doesn't mean like, okay, well, it has natural sugar, so I can eat as much as I possibly want. Have a banana, no problem. Have some, a serving of watermelon, but don't load up and have the entire watermelon in one sitting.
Yes, portion control, mindfulness.
Absolutely. We already touched on this other practical tip, but managing your blood sugar through activity and exercise is going to be super helpful. Again, exercise can boost glucose uptake by up to 50 times compared to being sedentary. So, 50 times increase in blood sugar glucose uptake, that's a huge amount to really help stay controlled with your blood sugar. So that one. And then the last tip I would have is the plate method. So half of your plate vegetables, 1/4 protein, 1/4 starch, all of those are super, super helpful. From a client's perspective, if you're thinking like, okay, Nicole, I understand, a lot of people have diabetes. I want to make sure I'm taking control of my health and doing everything that I can to prevent all of these chronic diseases, to understand how my body tolerates different foods. I want to do a 30-day glucose experiment. We would love to help you. We have purposely paired continuous glucose monitoring with nutrition coaching for a reason. Kayla, you're pretty educated about glucose. So, you looking at your numbers, it was easy for you to understand why something was happening or how to make a tweak to adjust. Most of our clients don't have that education. So what we have you do is the first week, eat the way you normally eat. Don't eat worse, but eat the way you normally eat so that you can see how your body responds. And we can start making tweaks every single week and help you improve week over week. We have those touch-based meetings virtually through Zoom, 20-minute meetings to review. You talk about what you've learned, and then we give you some tips and help you move forward to take some action the next week. So if you're thinking, hey, I want to do this, awesome, we'd love to help you. Click the link in the show notes and we can get you started with one of our registered dietitians. Dietitians on our staff are the only ones that are helping clients with this because it is considered medical nutrition therapy. Typically, continuous glucose monitoring is only covered by insurance if you have diabetes. But the cool thing is, since we partnered with Signos, now you can get this machine and you don't have to have diabetes, which is great. Kayla, any final thoughts as we wrap up this podcast today?
Just, you guys, this is super important. You can learn so much about your individual body, and I definitely think it's worth investing in your own health.
Awesome. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Kayla. I think so many times we might get our blood work done, but we don't understand what the numbers mean. Our doctor doesn't go through the results with us. We just know it's high or it's low. We definitely don't know how to actually fix those numbers. By understanding what's going on the inside of your body, you really are taking control of your health to prevent chronic disease. Because the statistics show us 60% of the US population has at least one chronic disease and 40% has 2 or more. Holy cow, think about that amount of people and the dollars, the healthcare costs that they have associated with these chronic diseases. Chronic disease is defined as something that requires ongoing medical attention for over a year. When we think about continuous glucose monitoring, it's not a solution for everybody. If you are doing really well with your nutrition and your health and you're happy, you don't need to do this experiment. But if you've hit a plateau or you're just curious about what your numbers are and how your body's tolerating different foods, or maybe you're struggling with sugar addiction and you're like, man, I need to see what's going on the inside of my body, this could be a great solution for you. It's pretty easy to get started. We are slowly onboarding people because it is high accountability. There's a lot of touch points with a registered dietitian when you do it paired with continuous glucose monitoring. You can fill out the form if you click the link in the show notes and apply for this coaching program that includes continuous glucose monitoring. It is a 3-month program. So what it looks like is you sit down in person or virtually, meet with the registered dietitian, you plug in the device, and then every single week we meet to review the numbers and help you make tweaks so that you can become the best and healthiest version of yourself. Well, I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode. Make sure that you tune in next week, subscribe, leave us a review. It really does help this podcast reach more people. And here at Healthy Steps Nutrition, our goal is to help people make health a way of life, one step at a time. And we know that if people hear this information and get these tips, and they most importantly take action on it, they are going to become a healthier version of themselves, one step at a time.